Hello Kitchen Science. Today we're going to go ahead and smoke a pork butt. Stay tuned. All right everyone, so now we're going to go ahead and make a rub. So I have a 1/4 cup of fresh cracked black pepper sitting around 16 mesh. To that I'm going to add some garlic and herb, all-purpose seasoning, 1/4 cup of that. Yummy, yummy. And then as our salt, we're gonna go a little different. We're gonna go ahead and use some Lawry's. And it'll be easier if I pull that lid off. And there is that. All right, so that's everything sitting in there. We've got almost 3/4 cup of product. We're gonna pop our lid on here. All right, so we've got our shaker lid. Couple of good shakes to get all that stuff in there nice and good. And like a little paint stir. There we go. Or like it's Mardi Gras. Okay, we're done. So there is our mix. All right, this is our pork butt. $2.99 a pound, about 5.71 pounds. Went ahead and picked this up at Aldi, about $17 total. Product of USA. This is a half butt. Unfortunately, it's hard to see here. It's boneless. I looked for bone in. They didn't have any. I needed something to smoke this week, and I decided, yeah, I can go ahead and I can eat some pork butt for a few days. So now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start the preparing process. Right, so we're gonna open this sucker up, just like so. When you open it up, try to leave the juice inside if you can. It's just gonna make everything so much harder if you don't. Gonna pull this guy off. You'll notice he's got a netting on him. Now, if you were gonna just roast this whole, you were gonna do anything really to it, I would go ahead and I would leave the netting on. But because we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do the seasoning, I'll end up trusting this later. And after I do the seasoning, and then this will end up sitting in the fridge overnight, like most of our barbecue products, and then we'll go ahead and we'll pop it on the smoker tomorrow. So the net's off, and you can see they actually took the bone out of it. If they would have kept the bone in, this would be all much more together. But since they took the bone out, we need to go ahead and fix that. So the first thing we're gonna do is pat it dry. Get all this extra moisture off of here, because a lot of people like to add binders. I don't think it's generally necessary to add a binder. I think if you just pat these things down dry, you'll notice the paper still pretty much sticks to it. The seasoning's easily gonna go ahead and stick to it. But the good benefit about this is because they did take the bone out, I can season the inside of the cavity, and that's exactly what we're gonna go ahead and do. All right, so we've patted her dry and we've made our seasoning. So now we're gonna go ahead and start adding it. You'll notice I'm doing this on a piece of freezer paper or parchment paper. I'm just doing that so that my wife doesn't yell at me later that I made a big giant mess. So you'll notice the paper kind of moves. I have it anchored on a couple different sides. So I'm gonna flip it over, fat cap down. And we're just gonna go ahead and add a general liberal amount of our seasoning all over the place, because I want everything to taste yummy, even on those ends. Don't forget about the ends, everybody. Want to make sure that we season all sides so that all sides taste amazing. Inside this little cavity right here. That'll be great. So we're gonna lift it up, flip it over. I also didn't clean this thing at all. I left the fat cap on, I left everything on, because when you are smoking a pork butt, you'll notice that while there is a decent amount of intermuscular fat in here, there's not a ton. So when we cook this, we'll actually cook it fat cap down first for the first hour or so, maybe hour and a half, so that we can get some of this rendered. And then after that, we'll flip it over. That way the remaining fat can sort of go through the meat all the way. I'm just checking to make sure that Everything's covered. She's covered. Now we're ready to do the next step. All right, everyone, so we have our string. I've got about 5 feet here. That's probably enough. If you want to go ahead and cut an extra little bit, you can. I'm pretty comfortable with this amount. So we're going to take our piece. Again, our flap is right there. I'm going to turn it this way just to make it easier for what I'm doing. I'm going to take my string and I'm going to lift it up like so, flip it over, and then you want to do a double pull here. And the reason that you do a double pull is because when I spin it like this and I put it down, it doesn't move. It stays there. And then to this point, I then want to go ahead and I want to put it together like so. And I want to go up and underneath. Okay, just like so. And when I get down to the other side, I kind of want to stop. Because what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get ready to do my next fold. And what I like to do is I like to go up to about here, do the same thing again, do my double knot, and pull. But instead of trying to go the other way, now I'm going to go this way. I'm going to flip it around. And you see how there's that piece that's right there. What we need to do is take a little bit of this string, pull this way, a little bit of this string, pull this way, right? And so what we've basically done is we've kind of pulled it all together. I then want to do my other double knot again, right? And then I can actually finish this double knot with a standard knot. This little piece of string here, I like to leave them about 2 inches long, so that it's easy for me to go ahead and find it later. And then voila. So we are good. We are at 250 degrees. We've got our pork butt here that's been sitting all night in the fridge, getting a nice crust on the outside of it. You'll notice I also cut it. I should have done this yesterday, but I didn't think about it. I forgot about it. So what you want to do is you want to put these little like 1 inch to 3/4 inch cross marks on here so that the fat renders out a little bit better. Initially, I was going to go ahead and start this guy on its fat side and then let it render out. But I've decided to go ahead and just do this instead. That way I don't have to move it around a lot. If the bone was in here, I'd be a little less inclined to have an issue with that. But because the bone's out, because this is how I got it, I want to go ahead and set it up so that it's set up for perfection. So our temp is where we need it to go. We're going to burp the egg. And there we go. I also have a water pan in here that I'm going to need to add some more water to. And the reason that I did that is that there's going to be a lot of fat that's going to render out of here, and I need it to be caught somewhere because, as I said earlier, there's a decent amount of intramuscular fat in here. The fat cap's also probably anywhere from like 1/3 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, sometimes in some parts even a little more than 1/3 of an inch thick. So we want to try to catch all that fat so that it doesn't do a lot of flare-ups. We don't get a lot of burnt smoke flavor. We definitely don't want that. So this is how this is going to go. So I'm going to grab this guy. We've got our meter probe in there. We've got our meter block here. I'm going to leave a phone out here or another device out here so that I can go ahead and capture the data. And then that'll be that. We're going to let this go at 250 degrees for about the first 3 hours. And then after that, we'll go ahead and we'll come out and check it. We'll see where it's at. Hello, everyone. Okay, so it's been about 2.5 hours and we need to go ahead and make a spray. And the reason we need to make a spray is we don't want the ends of the pork butt to go ahead and dry out. That's typically what happens when you do these long several-hour cooks with pork butt. It has so much fat, it pushes all the way through, but the fat soaks into the center and it becomes wonderful and beautiful in the center, and then the outside gets nice and crispy and kind of chewy and a little bit beef jerky dry-like. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want to make a spray. So I picked this up yesterday at my local Home Depot. It was like $4. I've heard good things about the action on these, so I'm going to go ahead and try it out now. So what I have is we're going to do a 1/2 cup of water. We're going to go ahead and do 3 tablespoons of Worcestershire, and we're going to go ahead and do a 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar. To that, we're then going to go ahead and pour it into our spray bottle. We're going to be ready to go check the ribs and see how they are. All right, so our mix is complete. We go ahead and just give it a nice stir. Now we're gonna go ahead and pop it in the bottle. The thing about this mix is that the pH is pretty low on it and the solids content is pretty low on it. So there's not gonna be a lot of room for a lot of microbes and stuff to go ahead and grow. So what I'm gonna do is when I'm done using this, I'm gonna put it back in my barbecue cabinet. It's gonna sit in there until I need it again. But typically, you know, high pH on the cider vinegar, low pH, on both the cider vinegar and the Worcestershire and a little bit of water. I could run a water activity meter on this to make sure that it is below like 0.8 or 0.6, but it won't be. But I could also go ahead and run a pH meter on this to see that it's below like 4.1. It's probably somewhere sitting in the 3. So I'm not too worried about any kind of growth in this. So you can take this guy and you can put this underneath in a cabinet, out in refrigeration. You should be just fine. All right, everyone, so you'll notice our temp, we're sitting still right around that 250, 260 range. It's been 2 hours and 37 minutes. Now what we're gonna go ahead and do is we're gonna burp the egg and we're gonna check on our pork. Oh, look at that sucker. Look at that, look at all the fat dripping down in there. Oh yeah, nice and jiggly. Look at that jiggle. That's great. This is exactly what we're looking for. We've got nice rendering going on. It's still a bit difficult, but we've got good fat rendering going on there. So I'm just going to go ahead and spray this. And you'll hear that sizzle. It sizzles actually in my pan. So I'm going to add a little bit more water to it, and we're going to let it go ahead and keep going. We're shooting to get somewhere right around 204, 205 degrees. Then we're going to wrap it. We're going to let it rest for at least an hour, hour and a half. All right, everyone. So it's been about almost 4 hours. It's 10 minutes under 4 hours. We're still sitting around 250 degrees. Let's burp the egg. And let's see where we are. All right. That looks amazing. Look at that. Look at that. That looks fantastic. So we're at 165 degrees right now. So now we're kind of at the point where we've got to decide what to do. Are we going to wrap this sucker? We can go ahead and foil boat it. Is it tender enough to where we keep it going? So I've decided I'm just going to foil boat it. So over here, aluminum foil, and I'm going to do what's called a foil boat. So I'm going to take the rib, and yes, that is very hot. And I'm going to start working on one corner, and I'm going to roll it over like so. And I'm going to keep rolling it all the way around. And the reason that I'm doing this is I want to get more bark. I think the bark on here is great, but I also want to go ahead and keep as much of that liquid as possible. So I'm going to put this back on here, keep going. All right, you can see how it looks right there. So we're going to let this now go, and we're going to let this go all the way up to 204 degrees. Hopefully it'll be another 2 to 3 hours. All right, everyone. We're at about 6.5 hours. I've been struggling to keep the temp around 250. It's sitting at about 235 right now. I've had a blower on it on very low. I've got the flue all the way open. I've got the cap off. The pork looks amazing. But we're at one of those stages right now. We're around 185 degrees, so we need temp to continue. You can see how it's definitely going where it needs to go. But all right, everyone, after 8 hours being in a smoker for about 6.5 hours and then being in my home oven for about 8, it's finally time to go ahead and be done. As you'll notice, we started pulling it apart, and it's perfect all the way through. My family was so happy about it that they just started ripping pieces of it off. But there goes another little one right there. As you can see, it's quite delicious. That fat cap's fantastic. And the meat, just look at that. Just shreds all the way down. Super duper flaky. Anyways, if you like this content, please go ahead and like, share, and just subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions you want to ask, please go ahead and put them down below, and I'll get back to you. If you want to see something else the following week, let me know, and I'll try to go ahead and make that for you. Thanks. Have a great day.